So we're back for another deep dive. It's Wednesday morning. Highlight for me, getting to hang out with you, Dean.
Come on, Wednesday mornings. Love it, man.
How's your day been so far?
It's been good.
Been good?
But only getting better.
Only getting better. And so we're back, of course, to get into party theology.
Yes.
Doing another deep dive on our message series through Sundays here at True North. And today we're going to be looking at a really cool passage, a fun moment in the life of Jesus, which is one of those kind of occasions that triggers a parable for him, and a really fun one we're going to be getting into together today. And we thought a great starting point when talking about Scripture is, hey, let's read this together, right? So we're going to read a passage from Luke chapter 14, starting in verse 7. Do we want to do a verse at a time, or that get awkward?
I think it'll get awkward.
Get awkward.
I'm going to say go ahead and we will just soak in your reading of it.
All right, well, let's do it. Let's read the passage, then we'll have some fun talking around this and what it looks like and how it fits into this overarching picture of party theology as we're diving in today. So here we go, Luke 14. Now, when Jesus noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, give this person your seat. Then humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. No one wants that, right? No one wants that. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to a better place. Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. So great picture, great parable. What are some immediate hot takes for you as you spend some more time again in this passage?
I don't know if this is a hot take, but you're reading that, and I was trying to picture the scene and what it would be like in these meals. And actually, for some reasons, we were reading this one. Two pictures jumped in my mind. One was just trying to imagine what a wedding reception would be like, and what happens if you just sat like in the groom seat or the bride seat. That was one. That'd be a little bit awkward.
Have you ever been tempted?
Look, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm pretty sure I have once or twice, but it was kind of in the spirit of the moment, in the spirit of who I am, I suppose. So I think I didn't end up humiliated probably. I can feel like I can sort of picture.
So wait, let's clear this up. Were you in the bride seat or the groom seat?
No, I feel like I've done that, but I can't recall.
You doing it. Yeah,
I'm trying to. It'll take me a minute to like sift through the memories. You get like kind of foggy, but it's ringing a bell somewhere.
Yeah.
The other, I was just thinking about was like, when actually I feel like I can really relate to this, and so this is like if you go back to, I'm gonna go with like middle school. So when I was going through school. 6, 7, 8 was like that in the US was middle school. It's not high school, it's not primary, it's in the middle. Some places doing that here. And one of the sort of moments always in the day that was like of critical importance was where you sat in the cafeteria.
Right.
So our cafeteria is always like there is a distinct, it's probably the most close to this I can think of, a very distinct unspoken pecking order in who sits where. And it's like the worst possible thing that could probably happen to you would be more or less this parable. Like you sat at the top of that pecking order, you sat at that table, and they walk by and they're like, friend.
Dude, what's going on here? Like,
what's going on here?
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
This is not where you belong. You're out here.
Not where you belong.
I love this picture of the cafeteria in middle school. For growing up in Australia, there's not many schools where you have that pure picture like that. Yeah. But I just love, because to me, it's just like so many movies I can think of. It's actually what it's like.
Oh, it's just like that. Awesome. You walking in, you're scanning, the brain is sifting through, especially say the beginning of a new school year.
Right.
Because by a couple weeks in, everybody knows here's the order around the table. Here are the tables. There's a certain, year 8 to year 6. There's those dynamics. So you just kind of like, and then, I can remember certain moments where like an older kid, and maybe you're on, because you might be on like sports teams with the older kids, and you might get invited like, hey, so the opposite is equally true. To have someone
right.
go, hey, why don't you come sit with us today? And you're like on top of the world, like, whoa, I'm sitting in this spot. And, then that might last a day, and it's like, go ahead, go back to the seat of humiliation.
So in that scenario, if you're on the lower table and you get called up, are the friends around that lower table, are they supportive of you? Are they cheering? Like, go
oh my goodness, look what's happened. Like, wow, they got invited to, it could sometimes go the other way. Someone might be a little bit, upset that someone got, called for that moment or that day. Yeah. But I just go, it's really funny because
it's a good picture.
This is very human nature, and that's, I think, one of the things I love about it. Like, all of us actually will find in our own memories scenarios like this, that even, like, I've never even put those two together somehow. As you read it today and I tried to get there, like that like there's these things all throughout life where you're like, nothing could be worse, right? If you're going to go one of two ways in the cafeteria scenario, like you got invited up, great, and now everybody's cheering, it's all going well. But if you sat at the wrong table, it's literally like, oh, that's just humiliating. Yeah. That's rough. He reached for the stars, he really wanted to sit at that table, reached for it, but didn't turn out well,
Yeah. So there's the kind of picture that we see emerging, and obviously Jesus has got something to say into this whole space, and that whole desire to take that better seat, get on that better table, whatever it is. Yeah. And one of the words that stands out to me is that kind of striving for more, striving to look better in whatever social context it might be, as we consider party theology and what it means to find the true joy of community and parties and celebrating together. That Jesus is kind of indicating perhaps here that striving to look good, that's not going to produce joy in the way that we think it might. Yeah. How do you kind of see that playing out in the words of Jesus here and what he might have for us through the text?
Well, yeah, I think that kind of, you see that so clearly here, summed up in this kind of, if you humble yourself, you'll be exalted. It will result in something, better. You try to exalt yourself, you strive, it doesn't always go so well. And I just think it's, with what he's painting here, I think the fascinating thing about it is that, like, 2,000 years ago, different cultural context, for them, this kind of where you sat around the table is loaded with meaning. It's loaded with, it's loaded as much as my school cafeteria, and only it's also clearly spelled out explicitly, so, and there's not many environments that are as much like that for us today, where it is explicitly spelled out. Everyone knows this seat means this, and if you take that, you're saying, I'm kind of a big deal here, or you're assuming everyone else agrees.
That's right.
And thinks that you're the big deal.
Yeah. So rightly or wrongly,
that's happening. And likewise, it's very clear that spot down the end is whoever's sitting there is the least important. And I think this passage is so fascinating because we may not set our tables up like that, or have social spaces that are constructed that way. But nevertheless, when you unpack it 2,000 years later, we all experience the exact dynamic that produces, that dynamic of wanting to strive with a sense of somehow making ourselves feel more valuable, appear more valuable, more honored, more whatever. I just think that's fascinating how it translates across centuries.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess, what you've touched on here, this Jesus gives this parable from a context that he observes centuries earlier than what we currently experience. And one of the things that you know, my kind of imagination fires up when I get into passages like this, I think about we see he's at a house of the Pharisee. That's kind of the key kind of information we have as who are the guests that are invited here. And I get to thinking like, okay, so this is a Pharisee, and I think about their worldview, their framework of faith, their kind of points of reference of how we connect with God and how we experience joy in our connection with who God is. And the picture, some of the phrases that I'd build alongside the idea of who the Pharisees were, they were real faithful. I think, you know, for New Testament Christians, the Pharisees, they can really get a bad rap in some ways, right?
They are often given one way.
Right?
They become like an easy scapegoat.
Easy scapegoats.
Like if you're follow Jesus for any amount of time, we're probably most like them by nature.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And if they came today, we'd probably be like, oh, you seem like good people, all that stuff. But man, they are an easy scapegoat.
They're an easy scapegoat. Like
we all make ourselves feel better by looking at them. And,
So as Christians, we like Jesus. We're pretty positive on Jesus. And there's kind of some pretty direct lines between Jesus' crucifixion and you know, the chief priests, Pharisees. So I get where that prejudice towards him comes from.
Well, and Jesus' harshest words are reserved for them.
That's right.
And so I think that's the thing is, Jesus is always very strong on them. But I think that's the thing I always find amazing about them. But that's who we tend to gravitate this way. It's another human nature thing.
That's right.
That it's like, we will all look for something to hang our hat on.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're going to hang our hat on, we're getting it right. We're doing the right thing. So that's where you can be sympathetic for them. They're trying their hardest to do the right thing. Yeah. But I think, Jesus is, you know, and I always think as well that proverb sometimes cross-reference, not proverb has one about this one, but the other verse where I think, where it says God disciplines those he loves. You know, and I always think as well, like, some of his harshest discipline was for these people. This is total tangent, but I think it's always fun to kind of think about the Pharisees and how Jesus, who loves everyone, relates to them, but he's so harsh on them all the time. And like,
well, I think I actually think that's really helpful where my brain's kind of ticking over at the moment that you're talking about, you know, they hang their hat, they put their value on kind of like what I need to do to be right before God, and their whole framework of faith kind of revolved around that at the center.
Yes.
And so then I start to think, okay, who would be an honored guest in the worldview of an individual that's thinking like that? Yeah. And I think the kind of people that they'd be inviting, you think about the place of significance around that table, that probably it's going to be someone that's doing that really, really well. If you're Pharisee, you're like, this is what it means to live out faith. The people you're going to honor around the table are the people that are 100% invested in that. This is about what I need to do. I need to do it well. This is how I honor God in my faith. And that's what I actually love about the Pharisees is the heart. Like it gets clicked a few ticks over and goes in a bad direction. But the heart there is like, the original intention is like, we want to pursue God with every fiber of our being. Yeah. And so I think about who they invite. And so they're likely around that table. It's a bunch of individuals that somewhere in their soul, they're wanting to honor God. But it's just clicked over this. It has to be about what I need to do right. And I'm going to honor the people that do this really, really well, that make the right decisions, that look good, you know, publicly in their faith and all those kind of things. And then I love that Jesus comes into that space and gives this insight that actually, in all that striving, you're going to miss. You're going to miss the most significant aspect of what the kingdom of God is. And I love that as then kind of a flow into us. And like you said, like in reality, if the Pharisees were amongst today, me and you, we're probably going to have more in common with the Pharisees than with Jesus. That hurts a little, but probably true. And then for us to take on the same thing, like, what do we start to miss in the arena of faith when we strive for self-importance or looking good? Like what do we have to lose if we get that out of balance?
I mean, I think the thing that's helpful is to go back and go, where does this thing come from? And so, and therefore what we lose. And I think like you said, this is what they hang their hat on. This is what they put their identity on. But we all have this inbuilt. And why can this translate from first century a Pharisaic context in the Middle East. How does that translate to a middle school lunchroom?
That's right.
In 2,000 years later in Akron, Ohio?
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You're like, but it's the exact same deal.
Yeah.
And why is that? And I think, one of the things you realize when you kind of layer this as well with the biggest picture of the scriptures and what's gone wrong in the human heart, it does all come down to, where do we find our identity, our security? What is that found in? And we will look for it somewhere, and I think even a few weeks ago we might have talked about this, but you go back to the garden story in Genesis, and what is happening in the fall, this brokenness in relationships that takes place through the tree and the fruit, and it tells us there's this brokenness that sets in between relationship with God, relationship even with myself, the shame that sets in, and they realize they're naked and get the leaves. Brokenness now in my relationship with others. Eve, she made me do it. Eve, and that brokenness in relationship is what gets felt across human history, from there, to a middle school lunchroom cafeteria.
Yeah.
And this thing that we all live with of, I want to know I'm significant and I matter, and how do I achieve that, realize that? It's not explicit. It's not like we all walk around going, today I want to try and figure out what I could draw my value from.
That's right.
But we all live with it.
Yeah.
And it shows up all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think here, so then this story, it's like you get this sense Jesus is trying to now rearrange the thinking, that normal thinking of, specifically here around, you want to be at the honored spot. You want to be at the table where everybody goes, you're a big deal. You want to be, that's the spot you want in life. That's what we're all striving for. And it's like Jesus going that's a game. That's just a game you're not going to win.
Yeah.
And the more you grab for it, the more you want that chair, the more you think, if I could just be at the right table, I can remember being in middle school, like, man, if I could just get to that table, man, life would be great. I'd be great. It'd all be great. We all have these things that if I could just get there, what's really inside is like, then I'd matter, then I'd be significant. I'd be in the table, the place of honor where others are now going, you're a big deal. Like we all, and I think there's something, like we were made in the image of God. So if you go cosmically speaking, we're all a pretty big deal. We're meant to be, like we really were. And I think we do ourselves a disservice to ignore the reality that we've been created in the image of God. But that's where our identity should come from. That's where our security should come from. Like, why do you have to, you don't have to grab at this table. You don't have to, fight for this. You were born with it. Yeah. You were made in the image of God. And I think Jesus is trying to, the more you strive, the less you'll have it. The more you try to hang your hat on that or be the big deal or sit in the right seat, the less, he uses the phrases here, the less you'll be exalted, the more you'll be humbled. But what you're actually after, you're going to find that when you stop fighting for it and trying to achieve it and grab it.
Yeah, I love how you framed that in that whole kind of journey of faith, and really that whole story between us and who God is. And I guess this drive and what we see around the table here, what you experienced in Akron, is that I guess just another example of us trying to do something on our behalf that really God's already done, that Christ has done, that only Christ can do. Yeah. And it's almost just that deep breath, that sigh of relief of just I don't have to strive to look great, that my greatness is a product of who Christ is and who he's created me to be. And it's almost just what table I'm on actually doesn't matter.
And how great is that?
Yeah, right? It's just free from that pressure, that anxiety, it's just huge.
I think about, you think about here, Jesus, and I can't recall or any clues in this particular text, like which spot he was in. But it says at the beginning when he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table. So he's watching it play out.
Yeah.
And Jesus is like, I'm assuming, I could be wrong, so we'll go back on commentaries and maybe some clues here, but you'd think he's probably the guest of honor here. I don't know. Am I right about that? I haven't dug into it.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. It's a little bit unclear. I think it's certainly likely.
You'd think somebody went, I'm having Jesus over.
Yeah.
He's kind of he's a big deal. He's, a lot of people want to hear from him. He's teaching at this point.
Well, even if you think Pharisee and asking the question, who are they going to honor? It's going to be a rabbi. It's going to be a known rabbi that this is someone that I want at the place of honor. So I think that's very reasonable to assume that Jesus more than likely is in that spot.
And so he's in this spot, or was that spot meant for him? He's watching them. You get this picture as well, like everybody's sitting down, and he's noticing, all right, how's this? Where are you going? What are you going to choose? What are you, and obviously he's watched it play out, and now he flips it on its head for them. But I just think about this reality that Jesus. So how was he living this out? Either one, did he kind of mess with them all and choose the lowest seat? I don't know. But no matter what, in every meal he was at every table, he was, whether he was probably in the seat of the guest of honor, which he would have been, say, at the Last Supper, or that's a context you can get a better feel for it, but he is, or whether he wasn't, or whether he was at a table of tax collectors and it was a whole different table. It didn't matter what the table was. You always get the picture he was. I'll use this phrase, though it's not yet right, but that he was the life of that party. He brought a presence to the table. And I don't mean life of the party like he was just telling jokes. I mean that sense of he invigorated the space. Yeah. He brought life into it. Some people learned stuff they'd never learned before. All these guys went home like, geez, like everybody heard something.
He brought the kingdom around the table.
He brought the kingdom around the table. People tasted the kingdom. They saw something, heard something, experienced something. And what allowed him to do it was he was so free, like what we were just talking about, like he would have been that breath of fresh air, because never for a second did he play the game that I play, or that you play, or we all play. Never for a moment did he play the game of needing to prove his value through that which he did accomplish, where he was, how honored, what chair he was given, anything. His identity was so secure in who he was as the Son of God. Even just go back to the baptism of Jesus. Yeah. This is my child. This is my son whom I love. With him, I'm well pleased. And the life that he lives out of that identity.
Yeah, it's gold.
To be free everywhere, free to just be, who he was as the Son of God, incarnate, fully human.
I love that picture of that affirmation from the Father being that was the only thing he needed. He didn't need honor, prestige in the things of the world. He's my security comes from the Father's perception of who I am. Yeah. And isn't there something powerful in that for us if we just learn to listen to, God, he doesn't care. When you were 14, he didn't care which table you were sitting at.
That's right.
He had a different perspective of who you are. And I think when we can start to get at that, who do I look like in the eyes of my Heavenly Father?
Yes.
It is so much bigger or better than anything I could strive to produce in my friendship circles, in the people I'm hanging out with. The picture that God has of me, even if I do everything perfectly, live an incredible life of influence, I'm never going to convince you to think more highly of me than God already does.
Yes.
I just love that sense.
Awesome.
It's so freeing, right? It's just like, that's the creator of the world has got my back in a way that I could never convince anyone else to.
And I think, that kind of, then you go, wow, those who humble themselves and are able to humble themselves because they're free of that game, you're going to be exalted in that sense. If life goes well for you. Because here's that other just amazing dynamic of this. The people we most enjoy in life are usually those who have freed themselves
Absolutely.
in that way. You know, we're all like growing in that, or, you know, but the people, no one's perfect in it. But, you know, the people that we most enjoy are always those who are secure enough that they can humble themselves, that they aren't fighting for the spot. They just know who they are, and they're comfortable in their skin, and they don't mind if they took the seat at the worst table. Like, yo, here I am. I'm at the worst table. Everyone in here thinks that we're a bunch of nobodies, whatever, but that's all right, because like exactly what you said, I know what my Heavenly Father thinks of me. And the crazy thing is, they become the people that you think, I just want to be around them. I want to be around somebody like that. I want to be around somebody who's not. So I think it's just, again, so fascinating, those games that we can play and what Jesus does to address it here in this way that's like, man, you know, this just bizarre paradox that if you just stop trying to be, you know, stop trying to be cool, stop trying to be in the right seat, stop trying to be at the top, because when you can be free of that and find that security in Him, the crazy thing is, you'll find yourself with people going, I'd love to have you at my table. You know, like, I'd love to have you at my table because there's something different about you. Like, you're not competing for value, attention, anything. You know, you're free.
Yeah, I love it. And I see this whole conversation really being at the heart of this, you know, our series of Party Theology, of how do we experience joy in community. This is right at the center, right?
That's
if we can be free from all those things and just model the joy of the kingdom. And even as you mentioned, like, you know, those people that have that freedom, that security in themselves, those are the ones that are, you know, they're the ones you want to be around. But my thought is that they're the ones that are experiencing that joy that God always had planned for us in relationship, in community, whatever the context of party or celebration, that to know the joy of those occasions is to be someone that can just be set free from that striving.
You know, can I tell one story?
Please.
I was chatting with...
Is it another middle school story?
No.
Good.
No,
All right.
No, this is actually just on that. Yeah, no, that's it. We won't go back there ever again.
Sorry, you go. I'm interested.
No, they're fun. Well, we can hit more of those over time. But when I was in back visiting Akron this just few months ago, I caught up with a pastor from, I hadn't met before, but he's at my parents' church, and they really wanted me to meet their pastor. It was great. So I met this guy, and he was a brilliant guy. So we just immediately kind of chatting and telling stories, got to know him. We're just having a great time. And he started telling me this story about how he went to a particular stand-up comic, very famous stand-up comic, but I won't say who it is. But it was some people know him, some wouldn't, but famous, like back in it turned out me and this pastor are both about the same age. And this guy was like, you know, smashing it a little while back. Anyway, but all I'd say, he caught up with him after the show, starts talking to him. They just kind of hit it off. And so the guy's like, why don't you come with us? We're going to dinner or something. And he goes, I went to dinner with him. And he was like so excited because he always loved this comic. Also, just so you know, it's not someone famous enough. They don't have like their own TV show.
So like Seinfeld.
No. It's not that level. They were a famous stand-up comic. That was all they did.
Wait, let me clear this up. So you're out to dinner with your pastor friend.
No. Sorry, I've muddled it. He had done this years before. Right. So he's telling me a story about being out with, because when he told me the name of the comic, who I'd not heard of for years, but I was like, dude, I remember him. Oh my gosh. And he's like, I went to dinner with him. I'm like, are you serious? Like, how crazy is that? That's all. Cool. And he goes, but you know what? The whole time, it was like the dude couldn't turn off. Everything was still, had to be a joke, had to be funny. And he was like, being at dinner with him, he's like, I snuck out early because it was such a painful experience. And I just thought, isn't that so funny? As we were talking about this kind of striving, here's this person people really enjoy. I used to think he was funny, comic, cool, whatever. But that feeling of, I was like, man, I can totally imagine that as well. And you know what it's like when you're around a table with somebody who can't just relax and be themselves. Always on stage. Always gotta, so for a comic, always gotta tell the joke. For somebody who's kind of just a high flyer, always gotta name drop. Somebody who's, you know, a hard worker, check out what we did, And you're like, man, I would have always thought I wanted to be at a table with you, but it turns out it's a miserable experience.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to put yourself in a different way, just trying to be in that seat of importance. I'm telling the stories, the jokes. Everybody, look, I'm funny. When you're just like, just how about we just hang? Just be you. You just be you. We can all. I'm not gonna like you better or worse if you're funny here or not. You know. Yeah. Anyway, I just thought that was kind of a cool story of. This just made me think of it that like this plays out in so many ways. Yeah. But the freedom and the joy, party theology. Yeah. How do you be that person around the table? Because the world wants people at their table. We give them a taste of the kingdom when we're like, I'm just free to be here and be like, tell me about you. You know, let me hear your story. Let me hear your jokes. Let me hear your, most famous person you ever met. Let me hear, And it's like, that's fresh air. That's the life of the kingdom. Not grabbing for it. Just humble yourself. Value. Take interest,
It's good, man. It's good.
It's good.
As a slightly off-topic epilogue to today's conversation. Yeah. So, speaking of comedians and those kind of unplugged moments, so you've seen some of Jerry Seinfeld's comedians in cars getting coffee?
Yes.
You've seen some.
Yes.
Well, it's really interesting. You go through that and you see the guys that are on stage, I'm up here. But then when they're just chilling in a coffee shop, and this is one of the great things about Jerry, he is identical. He's chilling out in a coffee shop. He's exactly the same as he is on stand-up or on an episode of Seinfeld. He's that's just who he is, and for better or worse. And you see it in all the different guys on there. You see the ones that are like, this is who I am. I'm completely secure, comfortable with who I am. And then you see the ones that were like, you're up here when you're performing, and this is a different experience when you guys are just hanging out.
Or like, I think even as well, I think you're exactly right. You see those different things. That's exactly right. One of the things that I think makes that so cool, that the show, is because what you said, Jerry's the same both places. Even when he's there, the thing that makes that show work is he's not trying to be the center of attention in it. You know what I mean? Right. He's just genuinely loves to hang out with these people, hear some of their stories, draw it out of them, and it makes it quite a cool experience when you get to, see these two people who could both be fighting in the same moment for the place of honor. Like, I'm gonna tell the stories here. I'm gonna, versus, let me get interested in you and in what's going on. So that's a cool picture.
Actually, just one real funny moment. So they go, part of the premise of the show is, they go out to get coffee at these different places. And I forget who he was with, but they go to this coffee shop and it was about to close in 5 minutes. And this kid was like, no, sorry, you can't come in, we're gonna close. And the guy he was with like, Jerry, you didn't know who you were. That happens to me all the time. I bet that never happens to you. And he's like, yeah, that doesn't happen often.
That doesn't happen.
But then they just like really chill, just went on to the next place.
Look at that, they humbled themselves on the next table.
Like it was like no water, but I saw it was such a funny picture. This kid's like has no idea. He's just walking, sorry man, we're closing. I'm really sorry. Come back tomorrow. And he's just like, okay.
That is
hilarious.
Great. That is so, that doesn't happen to me often. Classic.
All right, good stuff, man. Well, we'll wrap things up. We'll be continuing in party theology. We've got a couple more weeks of this, right?
A couple more weeks.
It's going to be good. It's been a fun series and hope something beneficial for your life as we continue these conversations.